She walked into the bank in a tailored suit, just to deposit her paycheck. Minutes later, she's in handcuffs, accused of fraud, while the white manager smirks in front of the cameras. No one asked for ID. No one asked for facts. Just judgment, fast and public. But then a black SUV screeches up, and federal agents salute her. What happens next flips the entire country upside down. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The moment Nia Collier stepped through the polished glass doors of the Sterling National Bank on 14th Street, NW heads turned. Not because she was famous, though that would soon change, but because of the way she moved, with purpose. Like she belonged. Her navy blue blazer was tailored, her locks swept into a professional bun, and her briefcase bore the subtle insignia of a government contractor. The receptionist offered her a hesitant smile, as if unsure whether to greet her or ask for identification before she could sit. Inside, the building gleamed with the kind of quiet arrogance that old money cultivates. The floor-to-ceiling windows let in golden August light that bounced off marble floors and glass partitions. Most of the clientele were white, dressed in the understated wealth of generational trust funds and quiet divorces. They glanced at Nia, some with curiosity, others with the hollow eyes of people used to not seeing. She approached the counter calmly. "I'd like to initiate a wire transfer from this account," she said, sliding a leather folder with an authorization letter, encrypted transaction codes, and 2 forms of government-issued ID across to the clerk. The teller blinked, scanned the documents, and then stiffened. Her eyes darted toward the branch manager's office, a glass-walled box in the corner where Bradford Kane stood like he always did. Hands behind his back, posture straight like a man watching over what he believed he owned. Kane's eyes met Nia's, and in that second, something passed between them. Not recognition, contempt. He stepped out of his office slowly, like a principal about to discipline a student. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said with a clipped tone that tried and failed to sound courteous. "Can I speak with you in my office for a moment?" Nia didn't flinch. She'd dealt with men like him before. Men who didn't need evidence to believe in guilt. Only a gut feeling, especially when that gut feeling wore melanin. "I'd prefer to stay at the counter," she replied evenly. "All necessary documents are provided, and I'm on a tight schedule." Kane didn't move. It's standard protocol when a large sum is involved, especially when the account was flagged. Flagged? Her brow furrowed, but she kept her tone calm. "By whom? I can't disclose that information. Please follow me." Customers were beginning to turn their heads now. A mother with 2 toddlers paused mid-withdrawal. An older man in a tailored gray suit pretended not to listen, though his eyes lingered over his glasses. Kane gestured to the teller, and within seconds she stepped back, almost guiltily, as Kane leaned over the counter and pressed a silent alarm. Nia didn't see it, but she knew. The shift in the room told her. The way the air changed, thickening with tension and unspoken bias. She'd lived this moment in variations, 100 times before, but never quite like this. Within 5 minutes, 2 local police officers stepped through the doors, both white, both walking with the self-importance that came with being summoned to a place like Sterling. "Ma'am, we're gonna need you to step aside and answer a few questions." Nia raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "We received a report of potential fraud involving a large transaction. This is routine." "Routine?" she repeated, louder this time. "For whom?" Kane stepped forward. "The ID doesn't match the transaction history. We've had problems with identity theft recently." One of the officers turned to Nia. "Please place your hands where we can see them." The room was dead silent. Someone near the door gasped. A child whispered, "Mommy, is she bad?" Nia's jaw clenched, but she complied, raising her hands. "I have not broken any laws. My ID is valid, and the account was authorized under departmental oversight. You can verify with—" "We'll sort it out at the station," the taller officer interrupted, already reaching for handcuffs. Nia didn't resist. She knew better than to protest. "Not here. Not now." The steel clicked around her wrists. A flash from someone's phone lit up the space. Then another. The first video hit Twitter in seconds. The manager smirked. As Nia was led past the velvet rope service queue, the stairs felt heavier than the cuffs. She tried to meet no one's eyes, but her gaze landed on a younger black woman near the back, maybe 21, who looked at her not with fear but rage. Outside, the sirens had drawn a small crowd. Reporters weren't there yet, but smartphones were lifted in silent protest. Then the rumble of black SUVs pulling to the curb shattered the moment. 3 unmarked vehicles, sleek and armored, with blackout windows, the kind usually reserved for high-profile threats or high-level agents. From the front SUV, 2 men and 1 woman stepped out in dark suits. No visible weapons, no shouting, just fast, deliberate movement. The crowd parted as they walked, a sudden reverent silence falling over the steps of the bank. The officers holding Nia looked up and stiffened. "Collier," the lead agent called, voice low but authoritative.
Nia turned her head slightly. "Yes."
He walked up, looked her over, then turned to the officers. "Remove the cuffs." She was attempting to. "I said remove them." The shorter cop hesitated, then obeyed, fumbling with the key. Kane stepped outside, bewildered. "I called this in. That woman is using a fake identity." The agent turned slowly. His badge flashed under his lapel. "Department of Energy, Division." "Your name?" he asked Kane flatly. "What?" The manager blinked. "Your name," the agent repeated. "Full. For the record." Kane swallowed, suddenly unsure. "Bradford Kane." The agent nodded, glanced at his partner, then back at Nia. Then, in front of the growing crowd, he took 1 step back and saluted her. The second agent mirrored the gesture. The cop beside Nia looked like he'd swallowed his tongue. The bystanders were murmuring now, some recording, some gasping. Then the lead agent turned back to Kane, his tone still eerily calm. "We'll be taking her with us. But you, Mr. Kane, we'll need to speak to you soon." Kane's smirk cracked. "Wait, what do you mean?" The agent didn't respond. Instead he turned, gestured for Nia to follow, and opened the door to the SUV. Nia paused, glanced back at the building, at the logo, at the stunned faces behind the glass. Then she got in. As the door closed behind her, Kane stared after the vehicle, pale now, shaken. He turned to go back inside but was met with a wall of stares, silent and damning. From behind the teller's desk, someone hit record. Inside the SUV, Nia is handed a sealed envelope. Inside is a photo of Kane, taken 5 years ago, shaking hands with someone she knows should have been in prison. Ward 7, nestled in the eastern quadrant of Washington, D.C., rarely made the evening news unless it was for something tragic. The infrastructure lagged decades behind the polished corridors of Capitol Hill. Sidewalks cracked under neglect. Grocery stores were scarce, but liquor stores weren't. Yet inside a modest brick row house on Benning Road, a world of quiet brilliance was blooming, one that no one thought to look for. Nia Collier grew up between the constant drone of metro buses and the scent of fried food from the corner carryout. Her mother, Denise, wore a postal uniform 5 days a week, and a face that aged 5 years with every shift. Her grandfather, Vernon Collier, once an English professor now blind and retired, remained the most dignified man on the block, despite relying on a cane and cassette tapes to keep up with the world. The Collier home was small, cluttered with books, mismatched furniture, and a rotating mix of gospel and jazz playing on an old stereo. The carpet was frayed, the curtains faded, but every surface spoke of care. In that house, Nia was expected to speak in full sentences, use the dictionary before asking for help, and watch documentaries on weekends while other kids binge-watched cartoons. From a young age, she showed signs of exceptional intelligence. By 5, she was reading college-level vocabulary. By 8, she was correcting the news anchors on TV. By 10, she had memorized the DC zoning map and drafted proposals to redesign the nearest public park. Still, outside those walls, Nia learned quickly what it meant to be overlooked. At Kramer Elementary, her 4th-grade teacher often smiled through gritted teeth whenever Nia answered first. "Let's give someone else a chance," she'd chirp, though no one else had raised a hand. During parent-teacher night, Denise heard the phrase so many black parents know too well. She's very articulate for her background. The first sting of public rejection came during the Ward 7 science fair. Nia had spent months working on a project about urban heat islands, measuring temperature variance between concrete-heavy blocks and green-spaced zones. She built sensors from scrap, logged data hourly, and compiled it in a hand-coded software she taught herself to write. Her trifold board stood beside projects about baking soda volcanoes and how plants grow. Yet when the awards were handed out, she wasn't even mentioned. One judge said your presentation was too advanced. Her teacher told her afterward. Maybe next year, keep it simpler. That night, Vernon sat beside her in the living room, while she fumed in silence. Smart don't always get celebrated, baby, he murmured. Especially when it don't come dressed how they expect. Nia didn't cry. She just opened her laptop and started designing a new experiment. At school, the microaggressions evolved. A substitute teacher once mistook her for a janitor's daughter and asked if she could help clean the whiteboards. A counselor suggested community college before even asking about her grades. When she was named valedictorian of her middle school, the vice principal misspoke in front of a parent crowd and called her Mariah Collins. At 13, Nia had already learned how to package her intelligence so it wouldn't threaten. She stopped correcting teachers. She lowered her voice in class. She only showed half the math on tests so she wouldn't be accused of cheating. And still the world whispered, "You're not supposed to be here." It was a Thursday evening when the envelope arrived. No stamp, no return address, just her name, handwritten in immaculate cursive on thick cardstock. Denise found it on the front steps, tucked beneath the Washington Post. Nia tore it open carefully, half expecting a scholarship notice. Inside was a single page of heavy paper. At the top, a symbol she'd never seen before. A six-pointed star overlaid with an eagle's wing, embossed and glinting faintly in the light. Beneath it, a short, typed message. "We've been watching your progress, keep pushing. The world will try to contain you. We intend to unleash you, more soon." There was no signature. She showed it to her grandfather, who ran his fingers over the embossing with a trained touch. He went quiet. "This ain't from a school, is it?" Nia shook her head. "Then someone sees something in you they don't want announced." "Is that good?" she asked. He turned his face toward her, blind eyes seeming to see more than most. "Only if you're ready to stop hiding." Outside, police sirens wailed in the distance. Inside, Nia folded the letter again, slid it beneath her mattress, and for the first time in months, allowed herself to believe that maybe she was supposed to be here. That night, her laptop pings. A new folder appears on her desktop, one she didn't create. Inside, encrypted files and satellite images of her own school. When the acceptance letter arrived, it was printed on thick, cream-colored paper, with the Harvard crest embossed in red and gold. The words "full academic scholarship" were barely legible through Denise's tears. Vernon smiled slowly, his blind eyes misting over as he whispered, "They finally see you." But the truth was, they didn't. The first thing Nia noticed upon stepping onto the ivy-covered grounds of Harvard was that she didn't sound like anyone else, and no one else seemed to notice. Students in North Face jackets and Birkenstocks talked about summer trips to Prague and hedge fund internships. Their uncles arranged. Nia had taken 2 buses to her interview in D.C., clutching her resume in a plastic sleeve from CVS. The classrooms were elegant, the lectures engaging, and the pressure unrelenting, but the isolation was something no one warned her about. In her first political science seminar, the professor discussed systemic inequality in education. Nia raised her hand, prepared with citations and data from her own neighborhood. He looked past her and called on a boy from Connecticut, who gave a vague opinion about charter schools. The professor nodded enthusiastically. She tried again. Another hand shot up. Another voice. Another face. Not hers. It wasn't blatant. That was the trick. No one shouted her down. No one used slurs. They just didn't see her. Or when they did, it was with suspicion, not admiration. In group projects, she carried the weight. She wrote reports, coded data, built slide decks while her white peers praised each other in presentations, and forgot to mention her name. More than once, someone else presented her analysis as their own, word for word, while the professor smiled and said, "Good insight, Thomas." When she corrected them afterward, she was labeled abrasive, difficult, not a team player. Her first summer internship was at a defense tech firm outside Boston. On day 1, she walked in early, resume in hand, and was immediately handed a tray of coffees by a junior analyst. "I'm sorry," he said when she stood frozen. "I thought you were with catering." When she made it to the 11th floor, she was asked 3 times whose assistant she was. One man gave her his dry cleaning ticket. Every evening she went home to her dorm and stared at the walls, the same 4 blindingly white, with motivational posters her RA had hung. She felt like she was living inside a storybook written for someone else, someone with legacy connections, someone with skin the world called default. Still, she pushed through. She enrolled in dual majors, computer science and global security. She took 22 credits a semester, audited graduate courses, and held a 3.97 GPA. When her professors finally looked up from the roster and noticed her, it wasn't because they saw brilliance. It was because she broke their curve. Yet the recognition never translated to real opportunity. She applied to a competitive fellowship that had taken on 3 students from her cohort. All white, all with average grades, all from prep schools. She made it to the final round, where she was told during the interview, "You've got an impressive background, but we're concerned about how well you'd mesh with our team culture." She never got a rejection letter. Just silence. The most painful part wasn't being doubted. It was being unseen, unnamed, like she was allowed in, but not meant to be known. By senior year, Nia had built a research thesis around quantum encryption models for classified communication, a field she had already contributed to through her secret agency work. It was technical, groundbreaking, and well beyond the grasp of most undergrads. But she'd written it in the same quiet dorm room she'd cried in during freshman year, with the same hunger to be more than a statistic. Her advisor, Dr. Jonathan Rains, a tenured cryptography specialist, was hesitant when she first proposed the subject.
"This is advanced, even for doctoral work,"
he said during their first meeting. "I know," Nia replied calmly. "But how do you have access to this kind of algorithm structure?" "I read a lot." He stared at her for a long moment. "All right," he said finally. "Let's see if you can back it up." She could. And she did. Weeks before graduation, she submitted the completed thesis to the review board. Her advisor scanned the pages, face slowly morphing from mild curiosity to outright astonishment.
This is brilliant," he muttered. "Nia, this could change how we handle secure transmission models."
"Have you published before?"
"No," she said. "I wasn't sure anyone would read it." He promised to recommend it for departmental honors. She waited and waited. 3 days later, a notice appeared in her university inbox. "Your thesis submission has been flagged for internal review due to possible national security implications. You are requested not to discuss this project with faculty or peers until further notice." No explanation. No follow-up. Just a cold halt, like a wall had risen behind her back. She went to Dr. Rains. He looked stricken. "I'm not allowed to comment," he stammered. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked, her voice quiet. "You didn't. But someone, somewhere, thinks you may have accessed classified material. You should talk to someone. Do you know anyone in DC?" She nodded slowly. That night, she sat in her dorm's common room, while her peers popped champagne and talked about grad schools and Silicon Valley offers. Her phone buzzed silently in her hand. One new message. No contact name. "They're testing your discipline. Do not panic. Watch who approaches you next." And then in the corner of the room she noticed something. Someone watching her from across the quad. A figure in a dark coat. Not moving. Just standing. The next morning her thesis disappears from the university database. And so does her academic profile. Like she was never there. Nia stared at her empty university profile on the screen. The cursor blinked. A digital void. No name. No transcripts. No record she'd ever been enrolled at Harvard. She didn't panic. Not yet. Instead, she stood from her desk, pulled her suitcase from the closet, and opened the old leather folder hidden beneath a false drawer in her dresser. Inside 3 encrypted drives, a laminated ID marked classified level 3, with no agency logo, and a black business card embossed in silver. D47. You already know the rules. Nia was 14 the first time she saw the inside of the facility. Not Langley. Not Quantico. Something deeper. Something unnamed. She was escorted by a woman named Dr. Naomi Keyes, a calm, steely black physicist with a gap between her teeth and eyes that didn't miss anything. Naomi had found Nia through one of her early science blog posts, buried on a public STEM forum. At the time, Nia thought it was just some nerdy correspondence with a cool adult who asked better questions than her teachers. Until one day Naomi showed up in person, at the edge of Nia's science fair, in an unmarked sedan. "You're wasting yourself in classrooms that don't see you," she said. "Want to do something real?" That's how it started. Late nights became her sanctuary. After school, after homework, after pretending to be ordinary, Nia would log into a secure server, eyes scanning lines of foreign code, learning about logic gates, encryption trees, and quantum key distribution models used in top-secret transmissions. She was given access to dummy systems first, simulations. Then one day, a simulation stopped being simulation. She cracked a faulty firewall in a test algorithm designed to secure federal drones. It had taken the agency's adult analyst 7 weeks. Nia solved it in 4 hours. From there, the path deepened. Quiet assignments, remote access to black boxes, containing foreign intelligence data. She was told never to ask where the data came from, only how to protect it. The pay was modest, more like stipends, but the respect, the mentoring, the validation, that was priceless. And yet, in the real world, she was still just the black girl who talks too proper. A nobody. At school, she kept her head down. She went to prom in a borrowed dress, pretending she wasn't a ghostwriter for classified U.S. cyber defense tools. She sat in cafeterias while her classmates laughed about math tests, pretending she hadn't been in a virtual lab 5 hours before, disabling a false flag ransomware threat in a South Asian power grid. Even at Harvard, while they dismissed her theories and passed her over for fellowships, she was solving problems that full professors couldn't even define. It didn't get easier, it just got lonelier. One night in her sophomore year, she was sent an encrypted zip file tagged imperative response required. Inside was a data stream full of irregular noise, bursts of packets too fast, too random to be natural. She recognized it immediately. Covert communication bouncing across unstable frequencies. Someone, somewhere was planning an attack, and their methods weren't just dangerous, they were familiar. Nia spent 36 hours straight at her laptop, deciphering fragment by fragment, until the full pattern emerged. An encoded message, cloaked within a game server, hosted in a foreign embassy, hidden in plain sight. The objective was catastrophic. A digital reroute of DC's electrical grid, paired with a malware drop into airport control towers. The target date, 1 week from the file's decryption. She sent her findings directly to Naomi with one line. "We've got less time than they think." The attack was neutralized before it made it past the sandbox stage. Publicly, it never happened. Privately, Nia received a small, unsigned card in the mail. "Thousands will never know your name, but they live because of it." She cried that night, not from fear or pride, but from the weight of knowing she could never share the best things she'd done with the people who'd always doubted she could do anything at all. Now, standing at the edge of her ruined university record, the shadow job finally stepped into the light. That morning, her encrypted phone buzzed twice. A direct channel.
Naomi's voice. You're cleared. Level 5. Field autonomy approved.
Nia's voice barely cracked. "Where?" "DC." Nia blinked. "My hometown?"
New identity.
"You'll pose as a mid-level analyst, transferring legacy assets. Quiet retrieval, but there's one complication. Which is, the account you were retrieving funds from is tied to a manager flagged for internal bias. Bradford Kane. You've heard of him. I've met him," Nia said softly. There was a pause on the line. "Then you already know what he's capable of," Naomi said. "Be careful. This time, you won't just be watching from the shadows. You'll be standing in the center." Nia hung up, staring out the window of her dorm one last time. She'd always been two people. One brilliant, one invisible. One who cracked codes in secret. One who got mistaken for the help. But this mission would require both. And for the first time in years, she wouldn't be hiding. She booked a one-way train to Union Station. As the train rolled through the corridors of the eastern seaboard, Nia sat quietly in her seat, eyes focused on the blurred trees flying past. In her bag, she carried a locked tablet with temporary access credentials to the legacy account. The funds, over $360,000, were to be transferred discreetly to a ghost subsidiary. Simple on paper, but she knew Kane would make it complicated. Men like him always did. When the train crossed into DC limits, a part of her heart tightened. The city hadn't changed, but she had. She wasn't the girl who flinched when teachers ignored her hand. She wasn't the freshman who softened her voice to make others comfortable. She was something else now, a silent weapon, with a name no one had bothered to learn. But one day, they'd have to remember. As she steps off the train, she receives a new message on her secure device. Her cover has been compromised. Someone inside the bank already knows who she is. The air in Washington, D.C. felt heavier than Nia remembered. It wasn't the humidity, though late August clung to everything like a wet sheet. It was the history. The way buildings stared back at her with the weight of past decisions. The echoes of footsteps never acknowledged. She'd grown up here, learned to disappear here, but today she was walking back in as someone different. She checked her reflection in the black window of a government vehicle, idling at the curb. Her look was deliberate. Crisp navy pantsuit, no jewelry, minimal makeup, soft leather briefcase. just enough to pass as another consultant or executive assistant. Her ID today read Melina Graves, registered to a private security firm subcontracted by the Department of Energy. Her credentials were real. Technically, temporarily, the alias had been issued that morning. She crossed the street towards Sterling National Bank, its pristine limestone exterior, reflecting wealth and tradition. This wasn't a neighborhood bank. This was the kind of place where politicians kept mistresses' mortgages hidden under LLCs, and lobbyists parked campaign money in Cayman shell accounts. Nia stepped through the revolving door into a cool interior lined with smoked glass and brushed gold. A massive crystal chandelier hung like an artifact of old money above a polished marble floor. She scanned the room once. 4 tellers, 2 security guards, a few clients in tailored clothes, a manager's office, cornered off in glass. Her target, a secure transaction window connected to a dormant ops account, one that hadn't been touched since before she was born. It had been used once by a deep cover team in a South American energy crisis. Now it was being liquidated. Her job was to quietly move the funds to a digital clearinghouse for reallocation. Clean, invisible. Or so she thought. She approached the window, handed over her ID and authorization documents, and offered a calm smile. "I need to initiate a transfer from account 229 Azul," she said evenly. The teller's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her eyes scanning the forms. "I'll need to get the branch manager," she mumbled. Nia nodded. "Of course." She waited, shifting her weight slightly. Her training reminded her to breathe through her nose. Stay relaxed. Let the story be boring.
Then came the interruption.
"Is there a problem here?" The voice carried smugness before Nia even turned. Bradford Kane. He wore arrogance like cologne. Late 40s, thin hair gelled back like he had somewhere better to be. His suit was expensive, but loud. Pinstripes too bold. Watch too gold. A man desperate to project power. He looked Nia up and down, pausing just a little too long. "I'm Bradford Kane. I'm the branch director here," he said, barely glancing at the paperwork. "What's the nature of this transaction?" She met his eyes. "A government-authorized asset recovery. The documentation is all there." "Government?" he repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You don't look." He stopped himself. But not soon enough. Nia's lips tightened. "Is there an issue?" Kane picked up her ID, turning it over, pretending to study it. "Never heard of this firm," he muttered. "And this account? It's ancient. Why now?" She held his gaze. "I'm just the messenger." He gave a tight smile. "Mind waiting over there for a moment?" She stepped aside, calmly, but something in her gut shifted. Kane walked back toward his office, tapping into a terminal. Behind the frosted glass, she could just make out his fingers moving quickly, then the flick of his hand reaching under the desk. Silent alarm. She didn't blink. But internally the clock had started. A soft buzz vibrated in her pocket. She checked her secured device discreetly. One message. "You've been flagged. FBI looped in. Prepare for escalation. Do not break cover." Kane returned moments later, more relaxed now. Too relaxed. "I'm going to have to verify a few things," he said smoothly. "Protocol. You understand."
Nia gave a small nod. "Of course."
From behind the counter, the teller seemed suddenly nervous. Her fingers tapped a rhythm against the register. Not even she believed Kane's lie. The air in the bank shifted. The quiet calm now felt more like the calm before a storm. Nia's eyes scanned the glass doors. She counted down in her head. 3, 2. The first siren echoed faintly down the block. Kane's smirk deepened. "Sometimes," he said, stepping closer, "people try to play roles they weren't meant for. It's good you brought documentation. I'd hate to see someone like you get in real trouble." Nia didn't respond. She didn't need to. She could feel it. How sure he was that he had her. How certain he was that the sight of a young black woman in a bank requesting access to hundreds of thousands of dollars equaled criminality. He didn't need proof. He needed a gut feeling. And his gut had been trained by the same system that erased her thesis, that ignored her genius, that told him no matter how wrong he was still more right than she could ever be. The front door opened. 2 officers entered. Kane waved them over like a man hosting a dinner party. "There she is," he said. Tried to move a flagged account with fake credentials. The taller cop approached slowly. "Ma'am, can we see some ID?" Nia reached into her pocket. Kane's voice cut in. "Careful. She's been evasive." That one word, evasive, hit like a slap. Not aggressive, not threatening, just slippery. A word used to cast shadows without evidence. The cop stepped closer. We're going to need to ask you to come with us. Customers were watching now. Phones were out. Mia raised her hands slowly, professionally. My identification is in my right jacket pocket. I am a registered field officer under contract to the Department of Energy. We'll sort it out downtown, the second officer muttered. Kane folded his arms, smugly. Told you she was faking it. But just as the officers moved to cuff her, the front of the bank erupted in motion. 3 black SUVs pulled up in unison. Their doors flew open. Men and women in dark suits stepped out. No guns drawn, no shouting, just presence, controlled, precise, unmistakable authority. Kane took a step back. What the? Who are? One of the agents moved through the crowd like parting water. He walked straight to the officers holding Nia and said quietly, "You're detaining a federal contractor under active classified assignment. Release her, now." The taller cop faltered. We were told. You were told wrong." Kane's face began to change. The agent turned to him. "Bradford Kane?" Kane blinked. "Yes. You'll need to come with us too. We have questions about your role in compromising an active federal operation." The room went silent. Phones were recording, cameras flashing. Kane's voice cracked. "I didn't know who she was." "Exactly," the agent replied. "That's the problem. Just before Nia is escorted out, she receives another alert. Kane wasn't acting alone. Someone inside the agency fed him her name. Nia hadn't even made it halfway across the marble floor of Sterling National Bank before the first video hit the internet. Captured from 2 angles, the footage showed her standing calmly, hands raised, as officers moved toward her. One moment she was a nameless black woman, in a sharp suit. The next, she was a trending topic. Bank while black was typed with fury, sarcasm, solidarity and ignorance. By the time the SUVs rolled up and agents intervened, the videos had already been edited, captioned, and reshared. The part where federal authorities saluted her came second. The first wave of virality belonged to her humiliation. Inside the SUV, Nia sat stone still. Her phone buzzed non-stop despite being muted. Naomi sat across from her, flanked by 2 agents. No one said anything. It wasn't protocol to speak mid-debrief. But the silence carried weight. She opened her tablet. Dozens of pings lined her feed. Her face was plastered across Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube thumbnails. Black woman tries to steal 360 DKs from DC Bank. Gets arrested. Entitled girl thinks she can scam a real bank. Watch what happens. She thought she was special. Now she's in cuffs. None of them knew who she was. None of them cared. A now viral clip showed Kane waving the officers over, calling her evasive, implying she was a con artist. Another showed her being handcuffed. There were close-ups of her face, blurred at first, then sharpened through reverse image search. It took less than an hour for her full name to leak. Nia Collier. Someone traced it back to her high school science fair, where she'd once been the subject of a local news piece titled "DC Girl Genius Could Change the World." The internet dug deeper. Her Harvard enrollment, photos of her from freshman year, a tweet from 5 years ago, where she had mentioned encryption algorithms, now being spun as proof she was trying to learn how to hack banks. What had started as institutional racism inside a bank turned into a social media wildfire that consumed context and spat out a villain. She stared at her phone. Her notifications were a flood of ugliness. Always trying to steal and act like the victim. Affirmative action gone wrong. Another entitled brat crying racism. When she gets caught. Naomi finally spoke. "They're not gonna let this stay quiet." Nia didn't answer. "Do you want to issue a statement?" Naomi asked gently.
Nia's laugh came out dry. "A statement? About what? I didn't even get a chance to speak."
Outside the SUV, the world spun on. Protesters had already started gathering outside the bank, some holding signs, others just filming. The phrase Nia Collier had overtaken Twitter's trending page. But the damage wasn't just from strangers. People she knew, former classmates, professors, internship peers, began posting vague tweets and status updates, distancing themselves. A girl from her computer science cohort tweeted, "I always felt like she acted smarter than everyone. Now we know why." Smock. A colleague from her summer research lab shared a blurry photo of her and added, "Sad to see someone you used to work with turn out like this." Not one of them knew the truth. Not one asked. Hours passed. By nightfall, major outlets had picked up the story. Fox ran with federal bank fraud suspect detained in D.C. MSNBC was more reserved. Viral video of black woman sparks debate about banking discrimination. TMZ simply posted her photo with the caption, "This woman tried it." Nia was moved to a private facility in Foggy Bottom, under agency protection. Her room had no windows, just a cot, a desk, and a secure laptop. Naomi came to check on her, just past midnight. "They're running background clears across all your known aliases," Naomi said quietly. "There's going to be scrutiny, a lot of it, but we'll contain what we can." Nia sat on the edge of the bed. It's scrolling. Her face was now a meme. A screenshot of her being handcuffed captioned, "When you're not the 1% but try banking like them." Another with, "This ain't Wakanda, sis." She closed her eyes. "I don't even exist on paper anymore," she whispered. Naomi sat beside her. "That's what anonymity costs. It protects you until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it erases you." Naomi nodded. "You're not erased. You're exposed. And that's when they get scared." The next morning, the narrative twisted again. A small but growing number of people, on Twitter and TikTok, began questioning the incident. Someone reposted the video from a different angle. This one showing the federal agents arriving and saluting her. That part hadn't gone viral yet. Activist accounts began piecing together timelines, calling out Kane's behavior. Journalists started digging into Sterling Bank's history. Questions began surfacing about why federal agents had responded, why they'd treated Nia with deference, and why no official charges had been filed. Still, the hate drowned out the curiosity. Until the bomb dropped. A whistleblower from inside the FBI leaked an internal log to a progressive media outlet. Nia Collier. Clearance Level 5. Linked to Domestic Security Counterintelligence. The article didn't confirm her role, but it hinted enough. By noon, the hashtags flipped. Nia Collier clearance. Black excellence exposed.
They saluted her.
Shock turned to awe. Speculation flooded in. Was she CIA, NSA, a secret agent, a whistleblower? People who'd mocked her the day before were now posting tributes. "I knew she was too polished to be scamming. Black girls in STEM out here saving the country while we questioned their identity." That salute was everything. But Nia didn't celebrate, because with the leak came a greater threat. The agency scrambled to do damage control. They pulled her from public assignments, launched an internal inquiry, and prepared a press-neutralizing campaign. But none of that mattered compared to what she saw next. A new message appeared on her secure terminal. This one not from Naomi. Not from any handler. It was unsigned. Untraceable. "They didn't just leak you to shame you. They leaked you to stop you. Check the server you thought was clean." Nia logs into the supposedly clean server and finds a backdoor inserted by someone using her own encryption signature. Someone is impersonating her. The marble lobby of Sterling National Bank had become a vacuum, still silent, the air thick with tension and unasked questions. Nia stood upright, her hands relaxed at her sides, but her eyes were trained, watching everything. The two local officers hesitated after the federal agent's command, still holding her by the wrist, unsure of what to do. The agent's badge gleamed faintly beneath his coat, a symbol rarely seen in public, known only by those who understood what D47 meant. Division 47 wasn't supposed to exist on paper. "Release her," the agent repeated, voice low but thunderous in the stillness. The officer slowly unlatched the cuff. A hush swept over the lobby. Phones stayed up. No one blinked. Kane's confidence faltered. His arms had fallen from their earlier smug fold. His brow furrowed, lips slightly parted. He didn't understand what was happening, but something primal told him he was no longer in control. The agent, Agent Rivas, turned to face Nia directly. The two locked eyes for a breathless moment. Then, with a precision that could only come from deep military training, Rivas stepped back and raised his hand in a crisp, unmistakable salute. Gasps rippled through the room. A second agent, a black woman in a sleek gray suit, followed his lead, her salute slower but just as deliberate. A third agent remained near the entrance, scanning for threats, but even he lowered his eyes for a respectful nod. The cameras caught it all. Every phone in the room now recorded in stunned silence. Kane muttered under his breath. "What the hell is this?" Agent Rivas turned to him. "You'll be contacted soon, Mr. Kane." "For what?" Rivas offered no answer. The agents formed a tight triangle around Nia and began walking her out of the bank, not dragging her, not shielding her, escorting her. Like a diplomat, like someone not accused but honored. Outside, the steps of the bank had transformed into a scene of disbelief. What had started as whispers and retweets had become a crowd: protesters, journalists, neighborhood elders, even college students who'd skipped class when the video went viral that morning. News vans lined the curbs, drones floated overhead, and the crowd grew by the minute. A chant had begun, not loud, not aggressive, but persistent. Say her name. Say her name.
Nia Collier.
And then she emerged. Phones went up like a flash mob. Some people clapped. Others stood frozen, unsure if they were witnessing a reckoning or a miracle. It wasn't just that she walked out free. It was the way the agents moved around her, protective, but deferential. It was the way she didn't shrink.
Nia didn't wave.
Didn't smile. She looked out at the sea of faces, many of whom had only known her as a meme. 12 hours earlier, she saw their confusion, their questions, and their curiosity. But more than anything, she saw something new, a recognition that cut through the noise. She was no longer invisible. The reporters broke through first. "Miss Collier, who are you really working for? Were you framed?
Why did they salute you?
Are you a spy?" She said nothing. Naomi met her at the car door. The same steel calm as always. "DC's about to eat itself," she muttered. "They're already rewriting the headlines." Nia slid into the back seat, silence closing around her like armor. In the hours that followed, the media cycle went into overdrive. The initial narrative, the black woman caught attempting fraud, collapsed under its own weight. No charges were filed. No arrest report existed. And Sterling National Bank refused to release any statement other than "we are cooperating with federal investigators." That only made things worse. MSNBC aired the footage of the salute on loop. A chyron read, "Bank manager accuses federal agent of fraud." TikTok creators stitched Nia's clips with videos of other black professionals recounting similar banking humiliations. Hashtags flooded the internet. "Nia deserves better. Salute her."
This is what they do.
Even corporate accounts jumped on the trend poorly. A tech company tweeted, "We stand with Nia Collier. Innovation has no color." Underneath, a reply read, "Your company has 0 black women in engineering." The tweet was deleted in minutes. At the heart of it all, Nia said nothing. Her agency advised silence. The truth was too complicated, too classified. But silence, too, is its own story. People projected what they wanted onto her. Hero, hacker, symbol, threat. She was all of them, and none. By midnight, the city was pulsing. A peaceful rally formed outside the bank. Protesters lit candles and held up signs reading "Believe Black Women," "Power Moves in Silence," and simply Nia. Inside a secure DC bunker, Nia sat at a long table surrounded by government officials. Naomi, Agent Rivas, and 2 unfamiliar faces in dark suits flanked her. A screen on the wall played muted news coverage of her own face, looped with headlines. "Public perception has shifted significantly," one of the men said. "This salute was not authorized." Rivas glanced at him. "Wasn't unauthorized either. We're going to need to frame this carefully," the other man added. "There's heat coming from upstairs." Nia stayed quiet. Then finally, "Who leaked my clearance level?" No one answered. "Because someone wanted this. Someone wanted me outed. And they almost succeeded." Naomi nodded. Grim. "We're working on it." The agents exchanged looks. Then the room fell into stunned silence as the TV screen cut to a live national address. The president was at the podium, flanked by flags, her tone measured but sharp. Today, a young woman was mischaracterized, harassed, doubted, and yet she remained composed, professional, silent, because that's what we asked of her. But the truth is, we owe her more than silence.
Nia blinked.
The president continued, "Her name is Nia Collier, and while we cannot reveal her work, know this: she has done more for this country than most will ever understand." The camera panned briefly to reporters' stunned faces, and to those who endangered her safety or questioned her integrity. "I'll say this, there's a difference between a mistake and a betrayal. This was betrayal, internal, ongoing, and we will find it." Nia's breath caught. The room around her froze. She had just become the first field operative ever acknowledged indirectly by a sitting U.S. president. Naomi whispered, "This changes everything." But Nia knew the truth. This didn't change the danger. It only raised the stakes. As the president's speech ends, Nia receives a live notification. Someone has accessed her mother's home network from an encrypted IP, and the file thereafter is hers. The president's speech reverberated across the country like a shockwave. But what followed wasn't unity. It was exposure. Nia sat quietly in her DC safe house. The lights dimmed low, the glow of her secure laptop casting shadows across the room. On screen, security logs rolled across the feed. She monitored traffic from her mother's home network, watched the red pulse of attempted access spike, traced it back to an encrypted relay based in Reston, Virginia. An inside job. Someone with federal-grade masking, digging for something personal, something they thought she'd hidden there. But while agents scrambled to trace the breach, the internet had already started its own war. It began with a thread. A small account, run by a tech-savvy law student in Baltimore, posted a screenshot from a private Facebook group, titled Legacy Bankers United. In it, a message allegedly written by Bradford Kane read, "Y'all know how it is. Watch the blacks with designer bags. 9 times out of 10, it's EBT in disguise." The tweet went viral in under 2 hours. Screenshots followed. Old posts from Kane's deactivated social accounts surfaced through archives. One from a college message board where he wrote, "Affirmative action is the new robbery. Welcome to Harvard land of quotas." Reddit got involved. Threads dissected Kane's academic history. That's when the first real bomb dropped. He hadn't graduated from Harvard. He'd been expelled his junior year after multiple complaints of harassment and code violations. But that was never made public. Why? Because Bradford Kane's father was Harold Kane, a former regional finance director with deep ties to political donors, and until recently, a quiet advisory role at Sterling National Bank's parent company. Old articles surfaced. An op-ed Kane's father had written in 1999, titled "The Fallacy of Systemic Racism in Banking." The apple hadn't fallen far. With Kane trending nationally, the stories started flooding in. First came a young woman named Layla Brooks, who had worked at the same Sterling branch 2 years ago. She posted a video recounting the day she was fired after questioning why Kane had flagged 5 different accounts, all belonging to black women, as high risk without cause. "He said I was being too sensitive," she said, eyes puffy but firm, "that I was blinded by identity politics. He told me, some patterns are cultural, not statistical."
Then another story. And another.
A 65-year-old man named Reginald Harper shared how Kane refused to honor a certified check he'd brought to deposit for a church renovation. Kane claimed it was suspicious, called security, and Harper was escorted out. No charges, no apology. A mother of 2 described how Kane made her wait 40 minutes for verification when she tried to cash a tax refund check, even after she provided every document. Each video carried its own pain, its own weight, but collectively they formed a pattern. Kane wasn't just biased, he was strategic. He knew how to wear the mask of professionalism. He didn't scream slurs. He smiled while denying credit. He laughed softly while freezing accounts. He called it caution. He called it policy. But the victims knew what it was. Suppression by 1,000 cuts. And yet, none of them had ever seen justice. Until now. Inside a briefing room, Nia sat across from Naomi, 2 attorneys, and a man from the Office of the Inspector General. A large screen displayed a map of all Kane's flagged transactions. Over the past 5 years, nearly 87% had been associated with Black or Hispanic account holders. Less than 4% resulted in confirmed fraud. One of the attorneys folded his hands. "You're within your rights to press formal charges. Discrimination, malicious obstruction of a federal operation, harassment. It's all here." Nia leaned back in her chair, the air tense with memory. She saw Layla's eyes, Reginald's shaking voice, the mother's exhaustion. She thought of how Kane had looked at her that day, like he'd already made up his mind before she even spoke. "I don't want to be a headline again," she said quietly. Naomi responded, "You already are, but this time you can shape it." Silence settled again. Then the Inspector General cleared his throat. "There is another option." Nia looked up. "You could waive public charges and instead open a federal discrimination inquiry into the bank's internal processes. If approved, it would authorize a full audit, not just of Kane, but of the entire regional structure, bonuses, hiring, flagging practices, patterns, all of it." "Would that expose him?" she asked. The man nodded. If we find what we think we'll find, yes. And it would expose anyone who protected him. Naomi added, it's slower, it's quieter, but it lasts longer. The difference between burning someone and dismantling the system that made them. Nia stared at the screen again. Images of Kane's digital fingerprints, his flagged emails, his red-lined maps. One stuck out, an internal note he sent to another manager last year. The moment they come in acting like they own the place, they're probably here to rob it. It wasn't just about her. It never was. It was about every invisible barrier, every silent humiliation, every nod of suspicion masked as procedure. She took a deep breath. I want to see what else he's hiding. The attorney leaned forward. Then we start the audit. But I want it on my terms, Nia added. Quiet for now, but not soft. The inspector raised an eyebrow. That can be arranged. As they prepared the paperwork, Naomi turned to her. You sure about this? No, Nia said honestly. But this isn't just about him. It's about everyone who let him be him. She stood. For once I want them to squirm in silence too. Outside, the protest signs still swayed. A child walked past holding one that said, Black women don't owe you proof. The internet had begun turning Kane into a meme. Now screenshots of his frozen expression beside captions like, when you realize HR can't save you from the FBI. But Nia didn't smile, because she knew memes fade. Power doesn't. That night, Nia receives a secure file drop, hidden within our voice recordings of Kane on a private call, referring to her by her real agency codename. The leak came from someone inside the system, who wasn't supposed to know it. The audio file played in short, clipped phrases. Low, muffled, but unmistakable. Kane's voice, on a private call recorded 3 weeks prior. Collier's not just some consultant. I don't care what her badge says. She's D47, she's one of the real ones. A pause. That's why she's dangerous. She knows what they hide. And worse, she knows how to expose it. He chuckled. I knew it the second she walked in. They always walk like the room owes them something. The call had been routed through an untraceable burner, but the leak had come from within Sterling's upper executive server. Someone on the inside had not only accessed her agency alias, they'd weaponized it. Nia listened in silence. Her fingers didn't tremble. Her heartbeat didn't spike. Years of training taught her how to control her body under fire, but no training prepared you for the moment you heard your enemy call you by your most guarded name. She closed the file and stared out the window of the safe house. Outside, Washington glowed in that distinct 3:00 a.m. hue, half sleeping, half scheming. Somewhere out there, Kane was spiraling. But not alone. Someone fed him intel. Someone in the system. Possibly someone in hers. And that changed everything. By noon, Nia was back in briefing with Naomi and the Inspector General's office. The air was heavier this time, not with rage, but resolve. She declined to press charges. No court date. No cameras. No public performance of justice. Instead, she requested something far more dangerous. The full authority of her Level 5 clearance to run an independent classified financial audit of Sterling National Bank, from the inside out. Not just Kane. The entire architecture. It was a request no one had made before. Not at her level. Not for this purpose. The Inspector General leaned forward slowly, adjusting his glasses. You're talking about triggering Section 17B, he said. You'd have investigative access to financial systems linked to federal grant oversight, historic loan programs, redlining enforcement archives, and internal communications tied to legacy compliance structures. Nia finished. Yes. Are you prepared for the blowback? Naomi asked quietly. I've already lived it, Nia said. Now I want to understand where it starts. Back home, Denise sat on the couch with a folded newspaper in her lap. She didn't speak when Nia walked in, just stared at the same sentence over and over again. Unknown operative emerges at the center of a financial scandal. Nia sat next to her mother, unsure what words would help. None came. Finally, Denise said softly, You really want to dig this deep? I have to. No, she said. You want to prove something. Nia turned. I want to prevent this from happening again. Her mother's voice wavered. And what if it cost you everything? You've already lost your privacy, your peace. People think you're a fraud, or a spy, or a symbol. They don't care what's true. They just care about the noise. Nia looked away. I know. So stop trying to change the whole world by yourself. That bank is just one piece, and we've been surviving systems like that long before you were born. I don't want to survive it. I want to dismantle it. Silent. Then her mother whispered, "I'm scared you're going to break, Nia." She said nothing. Because deep down, a small voice whispered the same thing. Later that evening, she sat with Vernon on the back porch. Her grandfather didn't ask questions. He just handed her a cup of sweet tea, his head tilted toward the soft hum of cicadas. "You shook the room," he said calmly. Nia gave a small laugh, and it shook back. He leaned on his cane, his eyes staring out into nothing but focused somehow. "Do you know what your great-grandfather used to say about power?" he asked. She shook her head. "Don't chase it like it's something you don't deserve. Use it like it's already in your hands." I'm not sure anyone sees it that way when it comes from someone like me. They will, but not from yelling. From precision. She looked over. He turned his face toward her. Make him see without yelling. 3 days later, her audit began. She was granted secure clearance access to all Sterling branches east of the Mississippi. Her team included 2 federal analysts, 1 data forensic specialist, and a silent observer from Treasury. They found rot quickly. Loan denial patterns concentrated in predominantly black zip codes, even when applicants had higher credit scores. Predatory overdraft penalties, triggered against accounts under automatic credit freezes, when unusual activity involved amounts over $5,000 in accounts held by single black women under age 30. Flagged emails between Kane and regional directors referencing client risk optics. But it wasn't just policy. It was culture. One folder buried in a backup server revealed Kane's hiring evaluations. He'd marked a black woman applicant as overqualified and likely to disrupt cohesion. He'd labeled another as too community-focused possible liability. A separate PDF listed customer appearance discrepancies flagged internally, a coded phrase that mapped almost exclusively to black clientele carrying high-end purses or wearing designer sneakers. But the audit's most damning discovery came at 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday. Nia's forensic analyst forwarded her a folder titled Kane Sr. Compliance Archive. It contained a decades-old memo, written by Harold Kane, labeled strictly internal, recommending we reevaluate commercial loan exposure in majority black districts. Consider adjusting qualification thresholds to reduce financial risk exposure under appearance-adjusted metrics.
Nia stared at the screen.
It wasn't just Bradford. It was generational. A legacy of sabotage disguised as strategy. Father to son. Policy to practice. And Sterling Bank had known, because this folder was hidden, not deleted. She sat back in her chair, her throat tight. This wasn't about one man's bias. This was infrastructure built to fail people like her on purpose. Nia receives a direct message from a blocked number. Stop the audit, or we release what's buried under your real name. We know where your mother works. The hearing room was colder than Nia expected. Tall marble columns lined either side of the semicircular space, the air thick with polished formality and strategic discomfort. The lights were harsher than she remembered from news broadcasts, angled deliberately for cameras, not people. She sat at the center table, behind a narrow plaque that simply read, Nia Collier, Federal Security Clearance, Level 5, Independent Auditor, U.S. Financial Oversight Authority. Behind her, rows of press, aides, and public observers sat in tense anticipation. In front of her, a wall of suited senators flanked by advisors shuffled papers and whispered behind microphones they thought were off. C-SPAN broadcasted it live. Every major news outlet streamed it with rolling commentary. Twitter was already circulating her image back straight, gaze steady, black blazer sharp against a muted gray blouse. Naomi had told her hours earlier, keep it clean. Speak only to evidence. Don't let them bait you. But Nia already knew. This wasn't just testimony. It was a trial of her truth, her credentials, her presence. The committee chair, Senator Hafford, cleared his throat into the mic. Ms. Collier, please proceed with your opening statement. She leaned in. Senators, members of the public, I appear before you today not because I chose a spotlight, but because a system tried to erase me after I caught it operating exactly as it was designed. A pause. No theatrics. Just air shifting. My audit of Sterling National Bank uncovered over 2 decades of racially biased lending patterns, deliberate account flagging, and internal communications that framed black customers, particularly women, as financial threats rather than clients. She clicked the remote. The screen behind her lit up. A heat map of Washington, D.C., pulsing in red and green, zip codes mapped by race and income, overlaid with denial rates for commercial loans. Here are the neighborhoods where black residents were denied home or business loans, despite having equal or higher credit scores than their white counterparts. Now look. Click. At the flagged clients deemed high risk for deposits over $10,000. 91% were black. Most had no prior fraud claims. Click. And this, she tapped again, is an internal memo from 1989, written by Harold Kane, the father of Sterling's now suspended manager, Bradford Kane. It suggests raising risk thresholds based on appearance-adjusted metrics. A rustle stirred among the senators. Senator Carl Bryce, a Southern Republican, in a pinstripe suit, leaned forward. Ms. Collier, are you alleging that every denial in your audit was racially motivated? Nia didn't flinch. No, Senator. I'm stating that patterns don't lie, and this pattern wasn't accidental. It was policy wrapped in discretion. He scoffed. Well, discretion is a banker's right. Not every transaction deserves approval. Agreed, Nia replied calmly. But if discretion is only exercised when the client is black, it stops being policy and starts becoming discrimination. A ripple of murmured agreement echoed behind her. Bryce leaned closer. You're not a financial expert. You're a security contractor with a clearance. What qualifies you to audit banks? Nia clicked again. The screen changed to a timeline. 5 years of digital security protocol design. 7 classified counter-fraud operations. 1 cyber intrusion, intercepted from a foreign asset using banking software to exploit black-owned businesses. She let the silence linger. I didn't ask to be an expert in their systems. I became one because I had to protect people they never thought to protect. Senator Bryce threw his pen down, muttering, "This is a circus." He stood and walked out. Cameras followed him. One journalist whispered, "He just walked out on a federal witness." Nia said nothing. She didn't need to. Halfway through the session, Senator Emilia Torres, a Latina Democrat from California, asked, "Ms. Collier, how many Sterling clients were affected by these policies?" Nia's voice was even. Directly, more than 32,000. Indirectly, entire neighborhoods denied economic access. Entire generations quietly kept behind. And the bank knew. They hid it. Which means they knew. Torres sat back. Do you believe racism is embedded in our financial institutions? Nia looked around the room at the flags, the gold seals, the wood polished to a sheen that never aged. I don't believe it, she said softly. I've lived it. Then she leaned forward, eyes piercing the lens of every camera. We are not dangerous. We are not unstable. We are not out of place. She paused, just long enough to let it breathe. We're just done pretending you don't see us. A collective hush overtook the room. Click. The moment was clipped and shared across social platforms within minutes. On TikTok, it trended under Dawn, "We are not dangerous." Her quote ran beneath a still image of her in mid-sentence, poised and burning with clarity. Back in the hearing room, the chair cleared his throat. We'll take a short recess. This committee will reconvene in 1 hour. Nia stepped outside with Naomi, whose hands trembled slightly. You just became a movement, she whispered. I didn't want a movement. I know, but now you have one. So lead it smart. Nia walked past rows of cameras and flashing bulbs, her face calm but her body humming with something deeper. Not adrenaline. Control. She had it now. For the first time, on her term. 2 hours later, the committee reconvened and made the announcement. The chair's voice rang clearly. In light of today's testimony, the Senate Financial Ethics Board will open a full federal inquiry into discriminatory banking practices at Sterling National Bank and any connected institutions. All executives and former staff relevant to the audit will be subpoenaed. And then the name that echoed louder than any gavel. Beginning with Mr. Bradford Kane. Reporters rushed to file. Twitter went into meltdown. And Nia? She closed her binder slowly and stood. Her job wasn't done. But her silence was. As Nia exits the chamber, an aide slips her a sealed envelope. Inside is a photo of Kane, shaking hands with a federal official, who signed off on her clearance. The envelope was thick, unmarked except for a small red sticker on the seal. A detail so subtle it almost escaped notice. But Nia had seen that color-coded system before. Internal channel. Clearance tagged. Used only when digital transmission was too risky. Inside, a photographed. Bradford Kane, smirking. Hand extended in firm grip with a man whose face was familiar, too familiar. Elliot Carr, federal contractor. Senior advisor to Department of Energy Security Protocols. He was also one of the signatures that had appeared on Nia's clearance documentation 3 years ago, back when she first advanced to level 5. Kane and Carr. Together. Smiling. The image wasn't dated, but the background said enough. A silent room lined with old government agency logos. A briefing. Possibly a fundraiser. Possibly a cover. Nia's pulse slowed. Not from fear, but clarity. Kane hadn't just operated within a broken system. He had friends in it. The photograph hadn't even made it back into her folder when her phone buzzed again. This time, a secure agency line. Naomi's voice was clipped. "We need to talk. You're not the only one who's been targeted." Nia blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean other agents contracted. Peripheral. Our reporting stalled background checks, canceled housing applications, delayed business loans. Same profiles. Same timelines. Black. Brilliant. Quietly inconvenient." She exhaled. Slowly. "How many?" "We don't know. But it's not just federal." The next 72 hours felt like standing inside a quiet, controlled avalanche. Emails poured in. Messages from lawyers, grad students, tech engineers, military liaisons, and community organizers. Some used pseudonyms. Some were anonymous. But their stories felt like echoes of Nia's own. A former air traffic controller from Atlanta, rejected twice for mortgage approval after switching from a military to civilian job. The bank said he lacked sufficient transition stability, despite a decade of flawless service. A young PhD candidate in physics at a top-tier university, denied a federal research grant because her public communications made her a reputational liability. She had once tweeted about racist policing in her neighborhood. A cybersecurity analyst, also black, also female, had been offered a job at a defense firm, then ghosted after final approval. No explanation. Only silence. 3 months later, she found out her name had been flagged in an internal banking compliance memo. Each story different, but identical in pattern. And they all said the same thing. "We were warned not to speak." Nia wasn't shocked anymore. She was focused. She began documenting each testimony. Names redacted. Locations encrypted. Her team created an archive called Echoline, a private invitation-only portal where black professionals could share experiences without fear of surveillance or retaliation. But the scale was larger than she imagined. The stories expanded beyond banks, airports, universities, tech campuses, government buildings. A young black engineer recounted how he was held back for a random screening every week when flying from Boston to San Jose, even though he had TSA pre-check and a government-issued travel ID. A college professor recalled being investigated for suspicious spending on her university research card. The flagged transaction? A 1,020 euro purchase of lab rats for a federally approved clinical trial. And always, there were whispers of something deeper. A sense that somewhere behind closed conference doors and encrypted server rooms, there was a list. A blacklist. Not the kind that says "do not hire," but one more insidious. Invisible. Algorithmic. Shared between institutions under the guise of risk analysis. The tip came 2 days later. An anonymous email sent to Nia's secure account. No subject line. No message body. Just one link. When she opened it, her firewall spiked. Warning after warning lit up. Her system flagged the connection as hostile. But buried inside the code was a second access path, one recognized by her own encryption signature. Whoever sent this knew her architecture. Intimately, she bypassed the block. A single spreadsheet opened on her screen, titled Black Tag Internal Review. Discretionary hold file. Over 2,000 names, no public record. No explanation. Just columns of names, dates, locations, and institutional notes written in code. STG3, high visibility, vocal, monitor. ET1, interracial tension risk, withdraw support. Poly5 POS dual allegiance, recommend reassessment. And some lines were worse. PR7 target neutralization not necessary, career redirection likely. Subject flagged by internal referral. Nia scrolled until her own name appeared. Collier, Nia, DOB matched. Clearance, verified. HDW2, origin federal referral channel. Kane secondary. Beneath that, recommend professional containment. Long-term career plateau. No promotion beyond level 5. She read the line 3 times. They had planned it, predicted it, designed her ceiling. And then she saw another name. And another. People she knew. Friends, colleagues. One in particular stopped her cold. Keys Naomi. Origin unverified. Status, watch. Pause. Empathic leanings. They had flagged Naomi, the one person who had guided her through this entire journey, which meant they were watching both of them. Her eyes locked on the final column. List updated. 3 days ago. This wasn't a relic of the past. This was a living document. Active, shared, current. She printed nothing, saved nothing. Only closed the file and stared at the dim glow of her screen. The list wasn't a theory anymore. It was real, and now she held the key. Just as Nia prepares to notify Naomi, her secure device goes dark, force shutdown. A single message flashes before blackout. They know you opened it. The screen went black. One final message lingered in dim red text before vanishing. They know you opened it. Nia sat frozen, her hands still resting on the edges of the now useless tablet. Her heart didn't race. Her breathing didn't quicken. She was far beyond shock now. This was the part of the fight no one prepared you for, when you knew too much, and they stopped pretending to play fair. She'd seen retaliation before, from a distance through stories and files. But this was personal. The next morning, it began. A leaked memo circulated through encrypted group chats and inboxes across federal departments. Subject line: Collier. Clearance violation. Review initiated. It was unsigned. It referenced her unauthorized access to a file protected by interagency protocol. No mention of who leaked the file. No admission that it had been routed through a federal black channel. Just language designed to plant doubt. Subject initiated file access using deprecated security architecture outside SOP. Possible compromise of discretionary data. By midday, it made its way to the media. A former conservative strategist tweeted a screenshot of the memo with a quote: "She was never qualified. The security clearance was political. This is what happens when you promote for optics."
It caught fire.
Hashtags flipped from salute her to security risk. YouTubers rushed to monetize hot takes. The truth about Nia Collier. Hero or hack? DC's double agent. Even mainstream media didn't hold back. CNN ran a developing banner across their afternoon news cycle. Federal agents' access under review amidst data breach. Fox News simply labeled her woke operative compromise. At her agency headquarters, Nia wasn't even greeted when she arrived for her standard debrief. Her keycard still worked, but the elevator to the upper floors denied her access. She was told to wait in a sub-level conference room for over an hour before a junior analyst delivered the message flatly. "You've been placed on a temporary reassignment. Clearance level 5 is under review. Effective immediately, you're not to access secure servers or encrypted archives until further notice." Nia didn't ask questions. She didn't react. She simply said, "Who signed it?" The analyst blinked. It didn't say, which meant no one wanted their fingerprints on it. She walked out without saying another word. But inside, a cold realization settled in her bones. They were testing how much of her silence was loyalty, and how much was fear. The fallout spread fast. 3 speaking engagements canceled within 24 hours. One had invited her to keynote a conference on digital civil rights. The organizer emailed her a vague excuse. "In light of recent developments, we're pausing all external participation until reputational assessments can be completed." Translation: "We're scared of the noise." Another dropped her without warning. She only found out when the event's flyer reappeared. Her name replaced by a white tech CEO with half her qualifications. Even allies began to distance themselves. The nonprofit that had offered to partner with her audit initiative quietly archived the press release they'd written. A major civil liberties podcast, which had recorded a feature episode with her weeks ago, postponed the drop indefinitely. And worse, the public turned. The same people who had rallied behind "We Are Not Dangerous" were now whispering, reposting, rethinking. She's not exactly humble. She should have stayed in her lane. Isn't this what happens when you chase attention? Online, Nia's face was no longer a symbol of quiet strength. It was repurposed, memeified, weaponized. One account posted side-by-side images on the left, her walking out of Sterling Bank in a power suit. On the right, her security under review banner from CNN. Caption: "From hero to headache. Fast." Naomi was furious. "They're gutting your credibility," she hissed, pacing across the safe house kitchen. "And the worst part, they're doing it without ever proving you wrong." Nia sat at the table, silent, running her finger along the rim of her teacup. Naomi continued. They've stalled the audit investigation. They froze 3 subpoenas. Kane still hasn't testified. And now you're locked out of your own data. Nia nodded slowly. That's the goal. Isolate me. Delegitimize the truth by smearing the source. You need to go public again. Get in front of this. Let them see your face. They've seen my face, Nia replied softly. That's why this is happening. Naomi stopped pacing. I've watched you walk through fire, she said, voice lowering. But if you stay quiet now, they'll write the ending for you. Nia looked up, her eyes steadier than ever. I'm not staying quiet. I'm listening. Because there's one thing they always forget. Naomi tilted her head. What's that? Nia stood. Black women don't disappear. We adapt. And then we come back sharper. But even sharp blades can get dulled by silence. Her inbox remained full. But of silence. No support from agencies. No calls returned. Even her security contact at Treasury, once eager to collaborate, now sent her canned auto-replies. She tried to log into Echoline, the encrypted platform she built for whistleblowers. Access denied. Server suspended. She reached out to the host provider. Due to federal notice of potential liability, the account was terminated. She didn't ask which agency. She already knew. It wasn't enough to block her. They wanted her erased. 3 days later, an internal agency memo leaked to the press. Collier's pattern of unilateral access decisions, questionable discretion, and public defiance demonstrates a need for reassessment of all future leadership designations. They called her reckless, unstable, ungrateful, as if survival was a gift, as if silence was a favor she should have kept returning. She stared at the headline, alone in her apartment. Outside, the city thrived. Inside, the fire inside her dimmed, but never died. Then her phone lit up. Naomi, she answered. They've done it, Naomi said. It's official. What? You've been placed on unpaid administrative leave. Effective immediately. Nia closed her eyes.
They're calling it procedural. Temporary.
But it's a warning, Nia finished. Fall back or fall apart. She opened her laptop, reconnected to a private line, and stared at the few files she'd managed to mirror before the shutdown. Then she saw it. A forgotten folder, buried deep, labeled Sterling CRWNX. Final back. Inside, transcripts from an internal call dated 6 months prior. Voice N1. Kane's pushing too far. She'll notice eventually. Voiced in 2. Let her. The moment she talks, we'll say she cracked. One of the voices on the transcript belongs to someone Nia once trusted, an old mentor who once vouched for her clearance. In silence, Nia watched the transcript scroll across her screen. Voice prints matched, names confirmed. The betrayal was confirmed. Her former mentor, Dr. Elliot Carr, had not only vouched for her level 5 clearance, he had also helped to design the fall. His voice was calm in the audio file, chilling in its familiarity. She's brilliant, but brilliant people break. Especially when no one listens. Let her burn out. The agency can deny connection once she's out of play. She clicked pause. The room fell quiet again. It was in that moment, Nia decided, survival wasn't enough. She would own the system that tried to erase her. The strategy wasn't public. It couldn't be. Even though she had no formal agency support, the silence from the media storm had created space. People had moved on. Headlines shifted. But she hadn't. Quietly, she called in a few remaining contacts. Not in government, not in media, but in money. People who owed her. People whose lives and projects she'd quietly protected over the years. From digital sabotage, from corporate espionage, from cyber warfare operations they never even knew were aimed at them. They didn't say much. They just asked how much she needed. Within weeks, a fund was established, disguised, layered, designed to move like smoke. The fund didn't carry her name. It didn't need to. It moved through 5 shell firms, guided by a black investment firm in Atlanta, backed by a tech philanthropist in Oakland, and approved by a silent nonprofit rooted in Brooklyn. By the time the paperwork cleared, the fund had quietly purchased a 56% stake in Sterling National Bank. There was no announcement, no press conference, just a restructuring memo delivered to the executive board at 8:12 a.m. on a Wednesday. The subject line read, effective immediately, change of ownership authority. Kane was still blacklisted from public-facing duties, but not yet fired. The board had stalled, citing HR complications and pending investigations. Now none of that mattered. The ownership had changed, and the woman they tried to delete walked into the building, badge in hand, at 9 a.m. sharp. She didn't storm his office. She didn't come with guards or threats. She simply walked to the 14th floor, took the corner conference room, and summoned him. Bradford Kane, please report to boardroom A. His face was pale when he entered. Gone was the smug confidence, the power suit. Even his posture had changed, slouched under the weight of public disgrace and private humiliation. He paused in the doorway when he saw her sitting at the head of the table.
Nia didn't look up right away. She clicked through several documents on the tablet in front of her, cleaning her digital fingerprints, even now.
Then finally she said, without emotion, "Close the door." Kane obeyed, slowly, like gravity had doubled. She gestured toward the empty seat across from her. "Sit." He sat. She looked up. Calm, clean, controlled. "You're not being fired today," she said. He blinked. Confused. She continued. "You're being dismissed, quietly, permanently. No pension, no PR." Kane stammered. You can't just..." "I can. I did." She passed him a folder. "Sign it, or I bring back every deposition we've buried." Kane looked down at the page, saw the signatures of the new board, realized this wasn't a negotiation.
"I didn't know who you were," he said suddenly.
Nia tilted her head. "You keep saying that. But the truth is..." She slid her phone across the table, a paused video on screen. Kane's voice. "I knew exactly who she was." His eyes widened. "Found it on a hard drive buried in your executive assistant's backup laptop," she said. "Guess she thought she was helping you." Kane swallowed hard. "I gave you more dignity than you gave me," Nia said, her voice low but cutting. "You're not leaving in handcuffs, but you are leaving as a symbol of what this bank used to be." He said nothing. "Goodbye, Bradford." Over the next 3 months, Sterling National Bank underwent the most radical reform in its 100-year history. Nia didn't become its face. She didn't plaster herself on ads or launch branding campaigns. Instead, she put systems in place. Quarterly anti-bias audits conducted by independent equity firms, transparent lending reports, published publicly every 6 months. A scholarship initiative named after her late father, offered to students in Ward 7, pursuing degrees in STEM and finance. Internal messaging boards transformed into real-time accountability networks, where employees could flag discrimination anonymously and see it investigated transparently. The bank didn't just survive, it flourished. Ironically, the controversy that nearly ruined her became the foundation of a new public trust. People started choosing Sterling because of what it represented now, not in spite of its past. Nia didn't care about praise. She didn't want redemption. What she wanted was harder, to create something that would live on without her. And she did. A secret video is leaked from an old Sterling server. Kane at a private fundraiser, joking, "Oh, I knew exactly who she was. Thought I'd break her early. Guess that backfired, huh?" The crowd laughs, and one of the attendees is a sitting senator. The house smelled like lemon polish and old books. The creak of the wooden floor beneath Nia's boots hadn't changed in 20 years. Neither had the subtle hum of her grandfather's jazz tapes playing low from the corner of the living room. Vernon Collier sat in his usual spot, blind eyes turned toward the television, as if sight might return from sheer memory. But he didn't need eyes to know what was on the screen. "Another anchor talking about you," he said, a slow smile curling beneath his silver mustache. "Third one today." Nia sat beside him and watched. The chyron read, "Sterling Bank reinvents itself under new black leadership." The reporter spoke of unprecedented transparency, historic reforms, and a woman whose quiet power has reshaped financial ethics in the nation's capital. But Nia wasn't smiling. Kane had been blacklisted. His funders pulled out. His name was synonymous with silent racism, in polished suits. The video of him mocking her at a fundraiser, laughing alongside a sitting U.S. senator, had gone viral. The senator resigned 2 days later. Sterling Bank had not only survived, it had become a model. Other institutions were mimicking the policies. Her scholarship fund had already accepted 20 young applicants. And yet, "You don't look satisfied," Vernon said quietly. Nia turned from the screen. "I don't know if this was redemption or just really elegant revenge." Her grandfather tilted his head. "Maybe it was both. Does that make me petty?" she asked. "No," he said. "It makes you human." She leaned back and stared at the ceiling. "I thought when I had the power to change something, it would feel different." she murmured. Like I'd arrived somewhere. Justice don't come with a ribbon on it, baby, he replied. And sometimes it don't come clean. She looked over at him. You think I was right to stay quiet all those years? To work in shadows? Vernon was silent for a long time. Then, softly, you were born in a world that didn't want your brilliance loud. But now that they've heard it, what you do next is what matters most. That same week, the agency called. It was quiet, no public statement, no apology. Just a private message from the deputy director's office. Clearance reinstated. Status upgraded. We'd like to meet. They didn't say why. But when she walked into the glass conference room beneath DC's federal corridor, they stood to greet her. No salute this time. Just recognition. Your handling of the Sterling audit has made waves, the deputy director said. Not just for justice, but for our own failures and oversight. Nia nodded. You're not being returned to your old position, he added. You're being offered a new one. She raised an eyebrow. Senior Field Strategist. Division. The title meant little to most, but to those who knew it was a seat at the highest level of national operational design, reserved for architects. Quiet gods behind systems no one ever knew existed. Why me? She asked. Because the system tried to break you, he said. And you didn't just survive, you proved you could build something better. She didn't answer. She just looked at the nameplate on the table. Her name. Full. Undisputed. And she accepted. The letters started coming after her first public forum, an education summit, where she spoke about access, invisibility, and the cost of silence. They came in handwritten envelopes, scented with jasmine or pencil lead, from girls who had seen her on live streams, who had memorized her quotes, who told their teachers they wanted to be like Miss Collier. One said, I didn't know smart girls could sound like me. Another, they made me sit in the hallway for asking too many questions. But you made me feel like I should never stop. She read everyone, and cried through half. She wrote back where she could, usually with short lines. You're not invisible. They won't expect you. That's your power. Make them remember your name. Still, a voice inside her whispered, It's not over. Not yet. Then came the notification. An encrypted alert on her secure line. Banking incident. Same city, new subject. She opened a file. A 17-year-old black girl, named Jabria Thomas, had been accused of trying to deposit a scholarship check she'd won through a national coding competition. The bank teller said the check looked forged. Jabria had been made to wait 90 minutes in a side office while security hovered nearby. She wasn't arrested, but she was humiliated. The check was real. The apology was issued days later. Quietly, privately, but the video had already gone viral. Again. Different girl. Same city. Same mechanisms. Nia stared at the screen. It wasn't Sterling Bank this time. It was another branch. Different name. Same tactics. The ache returned. Not as defeat, but as clarity. This was never about one institution. It was about the blueprint. She walked into her bedroom, pulled out her go bag, loaded, ready. She'd kept it packed since her field days. She added a single item, a photograph of her younger self at a science fair, holding a ribbon she was never awarded. Then she called Naomi. Another one? Yeah, Nia said. Same city. Naomi was silent for a moment. You going? I already packed. Naomi exhaled. Let me know what you need. Nia looked at the photo again. I need the next girl to know she's not the beginning of the fight, and she's definitely not the end. As Nia closes her suitcase, her phone buzzes again, this time with a private server invitation. Sender unknown. Subject line, you're not the only one who bought a bank. The door closed with a soft click. The morning was overcast, gray light spilling into the lobby of Monument Capital Bank, another glass and marble palace built to impress, not welcome. Its walls gleamed, its arch shouted subtle wealth, and its staff moved like clockwork, polite only when someone looked like they belonged. Nia stepped inside just as the tension snapped. A young black girl, maybe 17, maybe 18, sat near the front, her knuckles tight on a manila folder, shoulders drawn inward like she'd spent the last hour folding herself smaller to stay unbothered. Across the counter stood a bank associate, lips pursed, voice professionally sharp. I understand you said it's a scholarship check, miss, but we'll need to verify the authenticity through our internal validation protocol. These things can be complicated. The girl nodded, eyes wide but expression closed. The kind of nod that said, I've been here before, That said, I know not to argue. I can wait, she whispered. You may be here a while, the associate replied. Nia didn't announce herself. She just stepped forward, her black blazer framing a white blouse, no badge in sight yet. Her heels echoed in the quiet, like a clock ticking down. 2 staff members turned. A security guard stiffened. She saw the glint of recognition, then confusion. She walked past them. No one stopped her. She reached the girl's side and sat. The girl glanced up, startled. A flicker of fear crossed her eyes, the kind that taught black children early not to expect help from strangers, especially not in spaces like this. Then Nia spoke. Jabria? The girl blinked. How do you know my— I saw your video, Nia said gently. I'm here for you. The room had hushed. 3 tellers now watched from across the counter. The associate who'd been questioning the girl leaned forward. Excuse me, who are you? Nia stood. Slowly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She pulled a folder from her bag, placed it gently on the counter, and flipped it open. Inside were 2 documents, one bearing the seal of the Office of Financial Equity, the other stamped with her reinstated federal title. Senior Strategist, Division 47. Auditor. The associate's eyes widened. I'd like to see your branch manager, Nia said. Immediately. The guard hovered uncertainly. I said immediately. Within moments, the branch manager, a stocky man in a gray vest with a nervous smile, hurried out from the back. We weren't aware of your presence, ma'am, he began. If we had known— Nia raised a hand. If you had known who she was connected to, you'd have offered her water instead of suspicion. He swallowed. There must have been a misunderstanding. There always is, Nia replied coldly. But misunderstandings don't happen at random. They follow patterns. Patterns your institution is now under review for. He paled. The associate turned a shade lighter. Then Jabria looked up at Nia, voice soft but steady. Are you her? Nia met her gaze and smiled. I'm one of us. She turned back to the manager. Release the funds, issue an apology, and have a written statement ready by end of day. I'll be watching. She reached into her bag one last time, pulled out a badge, not from division. This one was different, black and gold, with a new seal, Department of Equity and Algorithmic Oversight, a division that didn't exist publicly yet, because she had built it. They had tried to silence her, smear her, erase her. Instead, she'd redesigned the map. Now, she walked into the rooms they once barred, and she brought others with her. As she walked Jabria out of the bank, past stunned tellers and nervous glances, the young girl whispered, Do they always listen to you now? Nia smiled again, but softer. They don't listen, she said. They hesitate. Jabria frowned. Is that enough? Nia paused. For now. They stepped onto the sidewalk. The city moved around them. Cars, buses, men in suits talking too loud, mothers rushing past with strollers. But in that moment, the world slowed, and Nia looked over her shoulder at the glass door they had just exited. Same shine, same structure. But now, it didn't own her anymore. She reached into her pocket and glanced at her phone. A new notification had just come in. Encrypted. Sender unknown. Subject, you're not the only one who bought a bank. She stared at it, then tapped it open. A spreadsheet appears, listing 3 more banks. At the top, a message we've been watching too. Welcome to Phase 2. If you've ever been judged before you were heard, if you've ever been seen as a threat just for existing, you know this story isn't just hers, it's ours. Type yes if you believe silence isn't safe.